thank you guys for joining us today. My name's Alina Steele, and today I'm talking with Harvest Christian Fellowship's Worship Leader Kara Reynolds. And we are just kind of chit-chatting about what worship is and what it's looking like during this time. So, Kara, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Super fun. Yeah, it's super fun how we have been kind of forced into this virtual world in communicating this way. So it's pretty cool. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am a Frederick native, so Harvest, is just kind of my local church. I'm almost married 2 years to my husband Adam in April, which is crazy. As we were joking about earlier, I'm a cat mom. I have 2 cats. I love worship. I'm a music enthusiast. I'm a movie snob, writer, daughter in a family full of lots of other women, which is great.
Yeah, awesome.
When did I start? I started in September. So
as the worship leader,
you've
been attending Harvest.
Almost 10 years, which is crazy. I was thinking about that. I think I started attending when I was about 16. So yeah,
How long have you been on the worship team?
Probably 7 or 8, if not more, years of the 10 years. I'd say before that, my mom was worship leader for, basically the full 10 years. So she kind of came onto the team pretty quickly, and we all were, as the story goes, we showed up, and Justin and Frida, our pastors, were basically heading up worship, and it was kind of minimal at the time. And when we met, we said, yeah, our whole family is pretty much a worship team. We all play in a different instrument, and we all sing and do the things. And they were like, oh, do you want to just be the team? And so that's kind of how that started.
How convenient is that, right?
Right. I know. It was probably the first time. I remember it was the first time I was like, I feel like I'm actually an answer to somebody else's prayer, which is really cool. So I've been singing on the team for almost that long. I did words and stuff prior to that. Kind of how it goes.
Somehow.
What's that?
It always involves somehow. Kind of comes with the family territory. Like, this is what we do. This is how our family serves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's amazing.
I was thinking about, even just the worship culture and all that is involved in that, in terms of like the time and the effort and the commitment. And I don't really know anything else. So, I was dragged to worship practices since I was little. So, they put me in a corner kind of thing and say, like, entertain yourself. We have rehearsal tonight. And that's just all I know, in a sense.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
my world.
How is Adam, your husband? Is he musical at all? Has he been brought in essentially he's part of the family now and part of the team inadvertently, right?
Yeah. He says he was voluntold to do words. And he is actually pretty musical. It's funny, when there is a stage involved, I am much more likely to step up and be there and kind of perform and all the things. If there's not a stage there, I'm a lot more quiet, and he's the performer, basically.
Oh, wow.
So he's
amazing.
Really outgoing, and he, probably in our second or third date, we were walking around kind of where the movie theater is and stuff. And he was singing. He was trying to serenade me, but as a joke, and he was singing so loudly, and I was so embarrassed. And I think that kind of sums it up. When it's just for fun, he's he can totally carry a tune. He's a good singer. So it's just, that's kind of how the dynamic goes. But if I stuck him on a stage and I was like, all right, go lead worship, he'd be terrified. So,
that's funny.
I know.
So why don't we talk a little bit about what worship is? My background, I grew up Catholic, so definitely worship is not what we called singing in church. So a lot more hymns and quiet and organ and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
maybe for someone who's never attended a worship service similar to what Harvest has, what would you say, what is worship? Define worship for us, and what does that look like?
Yeah. When I was thinking about this earlier, I jotted a few things down because it was kind of hard to pin down one specific thing because it does mean a lot of different things to people. And their picture is kind of either skewed or not like a clear picture. It's almost a little bit messy. And it's funny because I think, if we talk about the lifestyle of worship, life is messy. Like worship is
Mhm.
not, to me, worship is uh, first a heart posture, which doesn't necessarily mean it's performance or perfect or um, always polished even. And if you have a lifestyle of worship, you and your life are kind of the sacrifice that are given to God. So you can worship on a Sunday morning, and I think that's like a really important part of it. You are with the congregation, you're singing songs, kind of that stereotypical, like you go to church, you're singing songs to God. That's very much a real thing, I think, in our culture. But I'd also say that like our worship is, when you're doing the dishes or you're like loving a friend well or loving your spouse well or being present with your kids or like your life is worship. And that's why it's also a heart posture, because if your heart posture is sort of just being conscious of God's presence in your life, then you can kind of be worshiping, like you can have that heart posture of worship no matter what you're doing. So it kind of spans all those different things. And I was even thinking about what it looks like on a Sunday morning, just to contextualize it for if someone were to come to our church. And it's very much a dialogue. It's what did I hear recently? Praise isn't necessarily reminding an insecure God who he is. He
Mm.
doesn't need that. Uh, it's more like we are so impressed and in awe of God's beauty that we can't help but praise. Like we can't help but adore who he is.
Mm.
And because it's a dialogue, we usually receive something out of that too. And it's not like in a selfish way, it's just because he loves us. And so often I will be singing a worship song to God, and then he'll kind of sing it back. Like
Mm.
I kind of am like, oh yeah, like he thinks that about me too. Like,
Right.
not that he worships us, but it's that back and forth of like, I love you, God, and he goes, oh, I love you too. And then, it's that simple. I'm trying to think of any other, if you wanted to get into the detail of almost some theological stuff, there are those like what are they, like the 7 Hebrew words for praise or whatever. If you ever studied that, that's super interesting because it describes so many different actions you can do. You can involve your physical body in it. I think that's really important. You'll see people raising their hands. That's actually a physical sign of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I even say if you don't come in and feel like you have the heart posture there, you can do something physical to help bring your heart there, which is like, raising your
Yeah.
hands. Maybe you just sing it before you feel it, or
Yeah.
you get out of your comfort zone a little bit, just something to really get out of your own head and
Mm-hmm.
connect. I think it's really, and again, the biggest reason that it's songs on a Sunday morning is because music bypasses logic and your brain and it goes straight to your heart. And I think it's actually a gift because it's a really easy way to connect. And it doesn't take as much to get there and to connect when you can sing something, because it has this human element, this emotional element that it's just a bit more relationship based. That's why love songs exist, because
Yeah.
just the words don't do enough you
Right.
know
Right. Yeah. I don't know, we've
yeah.
been in that place before where I've come in on a Sunday morning and fussed at one of my children for something or had an argument with my husband and just felt
Mm,
blah and I'm not here and almost like you're going through the motions. But I feel
yeah.
like our worship, if you just give a little bit and
Mhm.
like you said, either surrender in a way or, well, I'm just going to sing or I want to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel like you're almost just putting on a show, especially with, having little kids. I'm just going like, well, I'm going to tell them that I'm doing it, even if I don't feel like it. And it's amazing how just the presence and, like you said, that back and forth, you can feel, other people in the church and how all of that kind of fits together and can certainly turn your day around. And I'm sure you would agree that that is something that we can also do at home. And we don't have to have the Sunday morning from that. A lot of times, a lot of people in our churches encourage me, put on worship music, put on your Bible app and just have something reading the Bible to you. And that music will change the atmosphere of what you're experiencing.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, totally. That's fantastic. What do you feel like in this season of all of the stuff that's going on around us? I don't know that I really want to call it a crisis, but I feel like some people could be postured that way and just say like, this feels, it's severe, it's significant, it's a crisis, it's an epidemic, a pandemic, whatever you want to call it. It's definitely making us step out of our comfort zone. I mean, here we are doing something virtual and doing a video. Our church did its first time live video on. So do you feel like from a worship standpoint, is there anything that God is saying through that to the rest of us, or, anything along those lines?
Yeah, it's funny. I saw this video from, I think it was just like on Bethel Music's page or something. Brian and Jen Johnson were talking about kind of, it was this sort of reassuring message, I guess you could say, of don't lose your peace right now. And it was funny because one of them said something about 2020 being the year of vision and year of clarity or whatever, right? Which I know some people think is a little like on the nose, but I think is actually what's really happening. And I think the biggest word that stuck out to me and God kind of told me more about was the word clarity. And I felt like that really strongly, that it's going to bring clarity. I think, when we're kind of stripped down of distractions and busyness, we kind of know what's more important. And especially in American culture where work and what you do is so wrapped up in your identity.
Yeah.
People can't do that. And I'm not trying to belittle the tragedy of people not being able to work. That's not good.
Right.
But it's more, I see even on social media, so many people kind of stuck in their house with their family, and with all the good and the bad wrapped up in that. I think people are getting clarity on what's most important and what's, what do I actually want? With all this time on my hands, like, what are my goals? What do I see for the future? What do I want to accomplish with the extra time that I have? I feel like God's kind of, I jotted down this one note. I said, what a fool the devil's been made that God can make everyone, believers or not, actually start to realize that family's important and that clarity is important. And he's just redeemed it. I already feel him redeeming it. He didn't cause it. He is going to turn it around for good. And I'm already seeing that. I think it's kind of a cool time, despite the craziness of it. I mean, I think it makes me grateful that we live in the country that we live in, because I think, we're taking action quicker than most. And I mean, my husband's in banking, and he's able to keep working, and he's like really grateful for where he's at. And he'll come home and kind of tell me about his day and how different it is right now. And he's like, I'm really happy I can come home to like my wife, that I have somebody to talk to about this when we're shut in.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's really kind of a crazy, surreal time, but something's being done in it.
Yeah.
So I can't, my personality's bent towards finding the silver lining, but I think I don't know. I think a lot of people are actually finding that this is beneficial in some way.
Right. Yeah, that's a really great place to be in. Like you said, the silver lining, that's fantastic. What else, for someone who's never necessarily listened to worship music, or maybe just listens to like 91.9 or some other kind of Christian radio station, is all worship music the same? And does it all affect us the same way?
No. um, I think that there are I love this one teaching I heard from Rick Pino. He said there are the vertical songs, there are the songs that you kind of sing over yourself, and then there are the songs we're singing amongst each other, almost to each other, and you need all of them. You always need to recenter back on, like, you are singing to God, you're worshiping God. But I think when you're singing over yourself or you're singing with each other, kind of this horizontal thing, you are, I see that as you're agreeing with God's creation because he created you. And when you're singing goodness over yourself, or you're singing, God's promises over yourself or something like that, that's getting into agreement with what he's already saying, versus sort of that worship that can sometimes turn into like, God, I'm not worthy. God, like, woe is me. Like, it's really down. It's like downer music.
Yeah.
It's a little downer. And
some of it's depressing.
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't, I believe in, like, you can express all the emotions in worship, but worship is not, getting really down on yourself necessarily. I think the Psalms do a really good job of, you have that moment of, you can kind of be dramatic and sad, and and then it's turned around for good. I think I can even be in a dark season, and I have not necessarily lost God's presence or his peace in it. And I think worship songs that turn you back to that are really what I'm drawn to the most. And I think our church culture is kind of in that. We sing from a place of victory.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of freedom to kind of express what that is for everyone. Like the way people in our congregation worship, everybody's kind of worshiping in their own way, doing something different, because everyone's in a different place.
Yeah.
So we might all be singing, a victorious song, but maybe someone's doing that because they're singing it until they believe it. And maybe someone's singing it because they just experienced victory and they can kind of, it's their testimony.
Yeah.
It kind of covers that full spectrum.
Yeah.
And I love, I'm very relationship and connection oriented. So anything that has that element, I'm going to be drawn to as well. I just heard a really awesome teaching from John Mark McMillan, who he was basically saying, like, if you're not in it, I don't know if Jesus really wants it. Like, if you're, if you're not personally present in it, whether you feel it yet or not, right? Like,
right.
It's not quite what it's supposed to be. I think Jesus died for you to be able to show up however you are that day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And whether he leaves you be and says, this is your season, like, you're totally allowed to be sad today, or whether he says, today's the day to get up and kind of start moving on. I think that's kind of the point of the connection. You'll know because you'll hear what he's said. So I tend to not be drawn to the songs that don't provide any place for a connection. I think reminding ourselves who God is, like the songs that state facts in a sense, are good for us, but I actually don't think God necessarily needs reminding that he's God. It's more us coming into agreement with who he is, us reminding ourselves who he is. That was another part of his message that I thought was pretty funny. He's like, what kind of love song for my wife would it be if I just sung a bunch of facts about her?
Yeah.
My wife is this tall. Her favorite food is this. Like,
and you're like, where's the heart in that? Where's the love and the deepness that comes from that? It's like, no, I don't want you to tell me, like, girls do that. Why do you love me? Why are still you with me? It's, almost been 13 years. And I'm like, do you still like me? Why do you? I'm not the same person I was 13 years ago. And it's, that's not the kind of thing we want to hear, and that's a really great perspective. So last question, maybe.
Okay.
If you could recommend either a group of people or a group of songs, do you have one or two favorites in this, that you just can't get enough of right now? Or is there something that's so classical, you're like, no matter what funk I'm in, if I listen to this one song, it always clears it up? Just tell us a little bit about from some of your favorite songs specifically so that we can maybe tune into those and see how that shifts us.
Yeah. One significant one, I don't know if you'd think it's cliche, depending on what circle is kind of viewing this, you may or may not think it's cliche, but I remember probably the first song that really changed me was How He Loves.
Yeah.
It's a John Mark McMillan song, but I know Kim Walker from Jesus Culture did a version, went viral. I remember the first time seeing that she sung it in a way that was talking about like a tangible presence of God that I had never understood before. And the way she talked about it, I was like, that's not, it was completely foreign to me at the time, and that totally changed me. So that one's like a good go-to. Even that like melody line, the da 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 da, like it always is like, takes me back. And that chorus is so simple. Oh, how he loves us. But it's like, that's all you need so much of the time.
Yeah.
Like, you just need to be reminded of that. What else? Another really big seasonal shift for me was, I think it was back in college when Bethel Music had a particular album that came out called I Think We Will Not Be Shaken. So many songs off that album were just so like impactful and relationship based, and there's a couple on there that were just so like needed, I guess. In Over My Head, which was so like so new for me as a concept. Home, I love that one. That one's like, if you want to recalibrate your sort of theology to relationship and how the dynamic should be, I think that song Home is a really good example of, you're wanting to draw close to Jesus, but ultimately you're still reminding yourself that he lives in you already. The whole thing is, I've made my heart a home. Like, that is, I think, a really, really important part of worship in the sense of like, it has to come from inside sometimes. You have to connect to what's inside. And I think it's still back and forth, but ultimately, like, you have to connect in that deep place too. I also just love oldies. Lately, we've been like doing these fun mashups of oldies that I just love. Like, I think for this coming set, we're going to do, not to spoil it, but we're going to do, I think this little mashup, I love mashups too. That's like my thing. I love Breathe and Draw Me Close, like the Michael W. Smith stuff. That was kind of a couple of the first big waves of just that relationship type worship music. So if you want some classics, I think if you read
and add it in for everybody.
Yeah.
It's just, it goes on and on and on. So, well, thanks so much for joining. Is there anything else that you want to add in here, or anything else that you want to put in before we get off?
I guess for anyone who'd view this that hasn't come to our church, my mom, who was the worship leader prior to me, she served for 10 years, and then prior to that, she served at an old church as well. She said that the big revelation she got was, for our worship, and kind of her little alliteration that she had was, our worship is raw, real, and revelatory. And I was like, that's really cool. So I would say, like, those are like a few things that, like, if you don't really know what to expect, you can expect that.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks again for hopping on with me today and stepping out of our comfort zones and doing something
Yeah,
to provide some value and insight to Harvest. I really appreciate you getting on with me and kind of sharing
yeah,
for worship. So we
totally.
thanks for joining us today, and be on the lookout for more videos. We are going to continue doing this set as we dive more into our pastors, our senior leadership, and some more of our staff. So if you have any questions or comments, we'd love for you to leave them below, and we will get back to you. And have a fantastic day.